I may ask you to repeat that. Hi, we're starting the recording late, folks, and we're talking about emotive writing, writing that gives emotions, because people sometimes have trouble with that. And there's a couple of books that we've mentioned so far. I'm going to ask Michelle to hold up that book that she mentioned again, The Emotion Thesaurus. Would you be able to type that in the chat, maybe? The title, the author's name, and
there is also the Urban Setting Thesaurus, the Rural Setting Thesaurus. I'm sorry, I'm reading them because I bought them all.
Where are they from, Amazon, or did you get them elsewhere?
No, I think I got them from Barnes and Noble.
Okay,
but they are print on demand, so you have to order them and they print them and send them.
Okay, can you list those in the chat for me, Tonda? You have your keyboard.
And they're all by the same author.
Okay, you could put in one and then I'll just look for the stuff on Pals. If you put in the authors or one of the titles, but sometimes I'll look it up and they'll say, if you like this, you might also like this. So yeah. And Michelle, I think the Emotion Thesaurus, I think that's the one that he mentioned. So yes, Paul.
As an engineer, emotions are a foreign language.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. He doesn't have that same ability to be very emotive with his characters, and so she was. She must have read some of his work and said, "Wait a minute, this won't cut it." You know, you're being way too straightforward and just saying the action or whatever. You're not giving it any feeling. So
well, years ago, my wife and I went to a marriage encounter. By the way, I highly recommend that to anybody who's married. And they had a 8.5 by 11 sheet of emotion words that we were supposed to use. It's one 8.5 by 11 sheet covers a multitude of sins. Or not sins, maybe, but at any rate, if I find that, I can go ahead and send you a copy.
That would be great. I'm sure that would help. Yeah,
it's much easier to find than a huge book.
Yeah, I think I do okay with my characters and the way they talk, because you can imagine I'm nothing if I'm not all over the place emotionally. So I just have to capture it sometimes and stick it in the right place. Anyway, Tonda's been showing the covers of the book, so I'll be able to go back and look at this recording.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to make it so it doesn't look backwards.
No, that's okay. If you hold one of those up, I'm going to type in its title. Or you can even just say, okay, The Conflict Thesaurus.
And it's not backwards to us.
It's not backwards to us. And that was what? Post what? It's reflecting. So
this is the positive traits.
Okay.
And there's, of course, the negative traits there. There's emotional wounds.
There are a plethora. Okay.
And the rural settings.
The rural setting.
And then, of course, urban settings.
Are these all different authors?
They're the same author.
Who is the author?
Two women.
And they're all the same author as the emotions one.
Okay, gotcha. Ackerman and Puglisi?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Thank you, gang. This is great. We'll be able to follow up.
Yeah, and technically the emotion, this is the second one because they upgraded it. There's a first one also.
Yeah, yeah, I did see that in there. My issue is just I'll have to check Powell's, as Paul was saying, because I might be able to get them there. I know I sound nuts, but I just won't buy from the big A. And for us indie booksellers, it's one of those things. Anyway, thanks for that information. And I did, let's see, down here, emotive language. This is a handout that I will be able to use, and I'm going to do my share if it'll let me. I don't want a whiteboard, ding dongs. Okay, whiteboard. See, it won't, I don't know why, because I don't want whiteboard. I want share screen, right?
The green box at the bottom.
There it is. Okay, let's do the emotive one. And this is, they're very short, these handouts, so I'll be able to send them out to people. But the emotive language one I took from the Grammar Monster. I really kind of like them. And let's see here. Get it. There we go. Emotive language is the deliberate choice of words to elicit emotion. Isn't that complicated? Goodness. Usually used to influence. That's like the salespeople in the ads. Ideas can be expressed in a way that is positive or negative, or welcoming or threatening. It all depends on the words selected. And they've given the victims were executed in cold blood compared to the men were killed. Real life example. We know this from watching a lot of our media news, you know, right? The talking heads, they do that. Everybody's been slaughtered or you know, whatever. Non-emotive, emotive language is designed to tell you the facts while influencing you to adopt the author's opinion. Here are examples of emotive language, and then that's included there. I like this non-emotive version. Mr. Smith was attacked by Mr. Jones for 2 minutes. Emotive version, for what seemed like a lifetime, Mr. Smith was subjected to a vicious, cowardly assault by the unemployed, steroid-pumped monster. That's pretty heavy. It says, you're the narrator and the judge at the same time. You're telling it, but you're also judging this person by using whatever language you're going to use. And it goes on. And again, this is one that I can send out to you if you have any interest in it. There are two good reasons to care about emotive language. The first is to influence others. And the other one is, ooh, the flames barely illuminated Lee's svelte, willowy, skinny figure. So you pick the one you want to use to get across that subtle difference in what you're trying to describe. And the other reason for using this not to be influenced by others. That's interesting. So the key point, state the facts and judge the facts using emotive language. Use the subtle differences between synonyms to influence your readers unassertively but effectively. And I'll stop that share. And I would like to ask if any of you have particular comments about how you've used emotive language. If you, Paul already said he doesn't know from that because, you know, it's hard. He was apt to just describe things, you know, in some kind of rather technical way rather than an emotional way. And that's understandable. Gets the information across, but you're probably not affecting anybody. It's not like in a fiction book where you want somebody to feel like crying or something over the character, right? And of course, this stuff that I just shared really doesn't address, I don't think, characters when they're talking, maybe in their heads, there's a little bit of that using these words, but the actual use of dialogue is going to be a little different because people usually don't pull out these heavier words to use in their dialogue, you know. But he was saying that he wasn't good at dialogue, so he wanted more, you know, of a chance there. So any ideas, Stephen, Nancy, any of you have what you've used for, have you discovered something about your use of language that way or grown in it?
That's one reason I'm here, is to understand better how to write in the difference between describing the emotion and making it more of a fact. I think too, what's going through my head is, as people, we have a very difficult time with one another. in conversation with our emotions. They get, so how in the world can we put that on paper and make it work right? You know, it's a difficult subject.
It is. It is. You know, it might be an exercise that some of us would like to engage in at some point for kind of a side activity in the guild where we could work on that very idea. Because from what I've read in a lot of people's work, beginning writers, when I get it and I see it, yeah, there's a weakness there. And for some of us, I suspect in a way it could be we don't want to get ourselves started emotionally while we're writing, because in order to do that, you do engage your emotions. And how do you stop them then? What if they take off with you and you end up feeling like crap because, you know, of what you were having to write? You're writing dialogue by a character who's kind of mean and you know, pushing people around and saying terrible things. That's gonna maybe put us in a mood or a spot where we don't want to be.
Yeah, you don't want to take the chance of writing a book that people will read.
Now, Paul, watch it. Yeah, it's like an actor who takes on a part, and then you know how some of them say they just live that part, and then sometimes I've heard some actors say they really couldn't even stay with their family while they were working on some parts because they couldn't disengage from that character, and the character was such they did not want to take that to their family. So wow, that's got to be, you know, and it took them a while to kind of come off that character after finishing.
I think
I
most
did it.
people that read books, people that buy books, that read fiction,
Mhm.
they do it for the emotional experience. That's what engages them in the work, is they identify with the characters and they want to feel along with them, to know what they're feeling. And so they have that vicarious ride. They're sort of like Jiminy Cricket on that person's shoulder. And so they're wanting to have the emotional experience.
Mhm.
And so what we have to do effectively is to show the emotion, not tell the emotion.
Right.
And so that's going to encourage the person who's reading, your reader, to be more engaged.
Yeah.
There's a metaphor you might consider: the difference between radio drama and television drama. In television, they substitute car chases and
Physical action.
gunshots, you know, gunfights and that sort of thing, to substitute for what they have to
Sure.
convey in words on
Mhm.
radio.
Yeah.
So your imagination is much more important in listening to radio.
Yeah, I think you're right. And when you have a picture in front of you, if I'm watching a movie and it's not a question of where the Tara and the character say, I hate her, but we're seeing a character yell, I hate you, and throw something across the room at them. That's a whole other thing than just reading those words. So without that, I'm glad you brought that point up, because I think that one of the problems is how many of our tools we could use. We're using our senses, but you know, in this case, then we're not using the sense of vision to where people are watching it. We don't have that. We've got to do it in the words that will draw that image. And Sandy's unleashed her mute, and Stephen's unleashed his mute. So who wants?
Could I ask a question?
Mhm.
Have any of you ever written something and then shared it with someone and have it be so emotional that you break down? That happened to me and I was shocked because when I wrote it, I wasn't thinking it was all that, and then bam, it just
Wow.
throttled me.
Mhm. Sharing
All the
it with
time.
someone else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that in my book too, Sandy. Writing
I-
about what my dad did, and you think it's over with, long ago, and boy, it just, okay.
I can understand that from your book, because I've heard, you read portions of it. And so I can truly understand that. But for me, this was not something and when I wrote it, didn't seem all that emotional. But when I read it to someone else, it's just like breakdown.
You can go in the other direction too. I read a book, Ordinary Men. It was about SS people, SS officers during World War II, at the beginning of World War II, and how they tortured and killed all their people. It was written very unemotionally, but you couldn't get through a third of a page without just really getting emotional about it.
Mhm.
So it's you don't have to make it blaring at you. Sometimes you can come at it obliquely and do as good a job as you would by I don't know. Another metaphor is swear words. I don't swear very often because when I say damn it, people look and say, oh, Paul's mad.
Mhm. Yeah, but this is a reader that's reading a book and
Yeah.
might not even know the author. They have no idea where the person's coming from. And you're right, in person, when people speak and say a swear word in person, it has a lot of power, because I've been there too. Now I've got Steve, I think, was the next one up to say something. Kalela has her hand up, and then Tonda came up. So Steve, did you have a comment?
Well, I really just unmuted to be able to join in the conversation, but I do would like to offer, if you wish, to read the prologue to Nissi, which I think is very emotive, and it's written in the first person, whereas the rest of the book is not. So if you're interested at some point here, I'd be glad to do that.
Sure, that sounds good.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, so it'd be nice for Linda to send that to us.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because what you're talking about is the difference between someone talking about someone in a scene or describing the characters and somebody saying, I woke up and I had a headache and and my head was pounding and I was angry for no reason at all, because and whenever the person is in first person, you can relate to them better. So hang on with that, Steve, because I want to get to Kalela here. She had her hand up.
So I kind of live by the quote by Robert Frost, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And I don't know, like the actor who takes on the role, I've had times where I'm writing where literally, I'm just in tears recounting something that one of my characters has gone through. And I've heard from other people who've read my work that it does get through. And I think sometimes you do have to just open yourself up to that rawness. And I think a lot of times as writers, we don't want to get in somebody's head far enough or deep enough to feel their post-traumatic stress from war, or, what the mute child is going through, or some of those things. And so that's sort of what I've done, because I know somebody was asking, has anybody else just broke down in tears? And certainly I have, and I have heard from editors and things that it does get through when you just open up for that rawness.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually the thing, is like Sandy was saying, I think it was Sandy, Michelle, when people read, that's what they want. In other words, they're reading to have somebody make those statements about it, so they are inside the head of the character and they can feel that character's pain and anguish or joy, all the wide range of emotions. So that's in there. Tonda, did you have something you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, kind of on the subject of the watching a television show versus like a radio show kind of scenario is that we automatically take on human body cues, facial expressions, body movements. But when you're reading it, you have to convey those. You have to say that. That's part of what I like about the emotion thesaurus, because it actually does physical signals, behaviors, like your internal sensations, mental responses, acute or long-term responses for emotion, you know, things that might be suppressed. It kind of goes down all of those things, even, you know, like powerful verbs that would help convey that for each different as you go
Did
through.
they give an example or anything, a short example that you could share?
I'll just pick one, like disgust, because the way these books are set up is I can't see, but will give you the heading of the name, like what emotion, and then a whole bunch of books. So disgust, definition and aversion, usually to something distasteful or revulsion. Then it gives physical signals and behaviors. So a curling lip, an open mouth with a tongue pushing slightly forward, wrinkling one's nose, flinching, recoiling, or shuddering, swallowing hard, then pinching the lips shut. I mean, it goes down a whole list of things like that.
They actually describe the character doing.
So yeah, so gives you like ways to describe while you're talking about, you know, so he pinched his lips tight while he said that, you know, did this or whatever. So you basically just helps give you those body cues to work in with your conversation, with your, so like I said, mental responses, compulsion to flee, physical, feeling unclean, wishing to be somewhere else. You know, these are some of the things that you have internal sensations, having trouble swallowing or feeling like one is choking, acute or long-term responses for the emotion, focusing on cleanliness, showering, rubbing skin raw, etc., hyper protectiveness of personal space, signs that the emotion is being suppressed, offering a watery smile while maintaining a safe distance, you know, so it goes down all of those different things. And then like powerful, it says associated power verbs for that, churn, curdle, faint, flee, grimace, heave, you know, so it gives you, so that's what I like about these books.
Yeah, great. That's kind of what.
So that when I feel stuck, then I'm like, okay, let's open up that emotion. What emotion is I want to
Yeah, that's the way this other one that I was showing is. It's probably not as, I mean, it's more generalized, but it does that too. It's organized by emotion. You know what you're trying to get. I don't want to cut us off at this, but I do want to move on quickly to a discussion of our pantsing versus plotting. Unless we agree that we don't have time for that much stuff tonight. If you feel like you still want to stay with the emotive stuff, because we can follow up with that. I like what Nancy was saying, and I would like to plan some kind of an exercise for people that we can do where we look at that, trying to do some of that kind of writing and maybe pass it back and forth, because there's probably just going to be a few people that want to do it. So I think it would be doable, you know, and maybe we could do it in the park on June, this is January, January 28th, because I've got that area for 4 hours. So maybe there's a little activity like that we can do that would be kind of fun, you know. Anywho, if you feel like it, I can move on to the pantsing and plotting. And is that okay with everybody, or okay? How about we do that? I do have a thingy bobber. Let me go down here, share pantsing and plotting. And this one again is pretty short. I got it from a couple of places, and I'm just going to give you the overview. What's the difference? I think we all know what the difference is. You're either winging it or you're plotting it all out. Part of what they cover in here is also that you can cut into the middle, you can combine the two things. And so you can maybe at some point, you want to do a little plotting out and organizing. At another point, you maybe just want the work to flow and come to you. And then sometimes you'll get something and maybe you want to put it somewhere else and put it in with a plot section. But each of them, it says plotting takes time. These are the negatives or the cons. It's hard work. You don't have a word count by which to measure your progress during the plotting stage. It robs you of your creativity. By the time you finish plotting, you'll have lost interest in writing. I don't want to do this anymore. There's less freedom to make changes to the story. Okay. But the plus side, you'll probably need to do fewer rewrites. The story has direction. You'll have focus. You'll know what you need to write. You'll probably get through it quicker because you won't get stuck as often. And you can write whenever you have time without waiting for inspiration to strike. That's probably one of the best ones for people. And then with pantsing, the cons, the things against it, it involves a lot more staring at a blank page and a lot more writer's block. More rewriting because you're just kind of writing as it spills out, theoretically. And you can only write when you have inspiration. When you run out, you get stuck and give up. So that's kind of the negatives there. And the positive side, the pros, it's a wonderful journey of creativity and discovery. It is one way for you to discover things about yourself because kind of this stuff comes and you go, whoa, I had no idea that was there. Your characters make stuff up as they go along. They do the planning for you. And you have more freedom to make spontaneous changes. Okay. And then from the NaNoWriMo, somebody's, this Will Soulsby McCree, a NaNoWriMo guest writer, said that people will talk about being a pantser plotter like you're going to land in one of these boxes and stay there for the rest of your life. But I just don't think that's true. I think it's better represented as a galaxy. People orbit or don't orbit different planets at different times and to different extents. And he's got something he calls plantsing, which is a combination of plotting and pantsing. And let's see, and don't forget what works for you is defined as what gets you to the end of your manuscript with the most ease. So how do you figure out what planet you're orbiting? Well, first, take a look at your life. Are you somebody who plans everything? You plan your meals, you plan your day, you have calendars and scheduling and time blocking? Then try plotting for your book. Are you a chaos incarnate? Does your house look like somebody upended a bag of holding in it, but you, whatever the heck that is, but you know where everything is, or at least the most likely 3 places to check? That sounds like me. Try pantsing. And then personally, I fall into the mentality of if I write an outline, all my motivation is gone because now the ending is right there. So what's the point? Do you sit somewhere in the middle of these two extremes? Then look at both of those things and see if you can't mix and match a little bit. Take a look at your writing preferences. Do you like editing, or is it the worst part of the writing process? So with pantsing, you're likely going to have to do a lot more editing. Okay. Take a look at your reading preferences. Do you like examining books for story structure and fitting the plot to a platform? Try plotting. Do you find story structure to be boring at best and incomprehensible at worst? Try pantsing. Then try different methods and don't feel beholden to a particular label. So then it goes through, just do that. And then this one comes from the writepractice.com. When to plot and when to pants. You may be surprised to learn that I absolutely think there is a place for pantsing. Well, I'm a big believer in plotting and planning. There's no way to write a first draft in just a few weeks without some level of pantsing. The key is to use plotting and pantsing in tandem. But before we get into that, it's important to recognize when it's more advantageous to plot, when pantsing might actually work in your favor. And let's see. Plotting is good when you have a clear storyline you want to follow. The plot of your book is multi-layered and intricate. You have a specific message, theme, or character element you want to convey, so you pretty much know what you want to put in this thing. You have very specific events or cast of characters you want to ensure are present within the story. And he talks about his own novel there. Pantsing, on the other hand, is more handy in the following situations. You have a basic idea, but are not sure how the actual scenes are going to turn out. So you're writing to find out the story events alongside the characters, just what is going to happen. Or you're experimenting with a new writing style, such as romance, trying sci-fi for the first time. You have some main plot lines, but are uncertain of subplots and the particulars of character development. So all in all, plotting is the best route when you have a clear picture of your story in mind, and pantsing is ideal for free exploration and experimenting in new territory. Now, did any of that ring any bells for you, or did it like a phooey? He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I think he's got it backwards. Plotting is when you don't know what's going on. You're trying to figure out where you're going. And pantsing, I'm sorry, every time I hear that word, I think of what happened to me when I was in junior high school in the middle of the quad.
Yeah.
But plotting is when you don't know what's going on. That's how you find out what's going to happen. And unless you do that, you don't know where you're going. But maybe you don't want to know where you're going. You want to let the characters tell you. But well, that's the way I do it.
That's how it works for you then. Plotting is good when you're not sure. So what do you do if you do know what you want the thing to be?
Well, it's going to be a mix. If you know what it's going to be, then you just write it. If you don't know what it's going to be, you plot it out, figure it out. You have to have some idea of where you're going. I always write the first chapter last, but
it sounds like it works for you pretty well. How about others? Do you have the same opinion or a different opinion, or what works for you? I know I am a pantser. For sure, I'm a pantser. I never know where my story's going, and I don't care. I want to find out. I'm like the person that reads the mysteries. I want to find out what's going to happen. So if my subconscious or wherever this comes from has a story to tell me, I'm just a pair of hands, and that's what I am, and that's where I'm going, and I don't care. I'm just excited. If it's interesting me as I write it, then I'm happy. If I'm getting bored, then I'm not happy. Sandy's laughing. She's muted, but she's laughing. Steve.
Yeah, I wanted to relate that my first novel I had outlined for 20 years, and I was working, so I never really got the time to sit down and write it, or didn't take the time. My job was pretty time intensive. But when I did retire, that was the first thing I did, was sit down and write that book. And about halfway through the outline, we just went off this way. And ever since then, I've been a pantser. I start out with a character that I know something about, and then I let him or her tell me the story. We go from there.
Yeah. Anybody else want to embarrass themselves by saying what they do?
I'm a plotter, but I think it's funny because I didn't agree with a lot of their cons for plotting, because I plot like what I call a skeleton. I know where I'm going front to back. I plot the skeleton, but then I pants everywhere in between because I let the characters drive it. So when I feel like I've gone too far one way, then I tell them, no, we got to kind of come back to this line because this is where we're heading. So, so that I feel like the story does this. It just kind of weaves its way along. Things have shown up in the storyline that I'm just like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to be part of this. I didn't know this character was here. But for the most part, I have the skeleton. I know where I'm going, especially because it's turning into a series. So I really need to know where I'm heading with it. But
Mhm.
story's writing itself. So a little of both.
Anybody else want to share their writing style? Eric,
I just write down what they do.
what they do? How do you find out what they do?
Crazy thing they get into, I just write it down and make a book out of it.
Okay, so somehow it comes up in your brain out of nowhere, right?
Yep, exactly.
There you are. You're a pantser. That's it. That is the epitome of the definition of a pantser. Anybody else want to share their? Sandy's going, no, what? Go ahead, Sandy.
I think I'm a pantser. And just like the other day during a windstorm, I happened to look out the window and there was a little quail out there, and he was tottering around. He almost got knocked over because it was blowing so hard. And I watched him as long as he was there. And then I ran for the computer and wrote a poem about it. So I don't know if you call that pantsing or not, but I was inspired by what was going on out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you could have called yourself a plotter if you had sat down, whatever. If you had put yourself in a chair and said, I'm going to write this poem, and you said, if you said to yourself, I want to get to the end where I can talk about how he doesn't fall over, and in order to get there, I have to describe the different. See, if you did that kind of detailed thinking ahead, then you're a plotter. But if you just kind of let it flow through you and come to you, then that's more of a picture.
I did, because he was like standing on one leg at one time, and then he turned and faced into the wind like a weather vane, and he was so beautiful. So I just ran over and started writing.
There you go. Sure. And it worked. She shared that poem with me and I loved it. Mark, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I'd say I'm haphazard. And I'm writing something currently, and I had to change the main character, what his background and why he's arrived at a certain location, another country. And I decided to make him a recovered meth addict, and crackhead. And he's away from all that now. But thankfully, I don't know much about meth. And so I just went on the internet and I typed in meth, and pressed enter. And I ended up in YouTube, where there's all these videos, and one of those documentary shows, which I only watched a few minutes of. And what was interesting was I happened to scroll down and look at the different posts. There were many posts commenting on the wonderful quality of the documentary, and then also some brief personal stories or people in their family who were been meth addicts and recovered. And what was so wonderful about that, I love the research, but I ended up copying and pasting from a variety of people that posted. And then I put those comments or observations into the mouth of my main character and a conversation that he's explaining who he is and that he's a recovered meth addict. And that was just, wow, it was all just, getting the truth from 1 or 2 dozen real people and just saying this is exactly what the content needs to be. And I didn't have to do much creativity at all, just to make it all one thing after another, like a conversation. So that was totally unexpected. And so I like that creativity to kind of bump into something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think watching something like that is similar to having a character talk to you in your head and tell you their story, because you're watching somebody else tell you the story. And as long as you're careful not to get into personal using somebody else's stuff in a way that isn't allowed, then I think you're fine doing that kind of thing. So,
Wow.
yeah, Tonda.
Where it gets really challenging is my daughter is a pantser all the way. She has no clue where the ending's going or anything. But since I'm a plotter and we're writing a book together, that makes for an interesting dynamic. But because of it, she loves to tell stories and loves to, formulate in her head. So we have discussed it. We know our book from start all the way to the finish. We know because we've discussed it as just a discussion and kind of talked in character with each other just when we're out and doing stuff together. So it's funny because taking her pantser side and my plotter side, we've kind of tried to merge them together and it's kind of working, but yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, I bet it is. Well, it's like here you are and you know where you've got it figured out that this is where it needs to go. And she's going, yeah, but this character doesn't want to go there. And I this is what I'm hearing from wants to go somewhere else. Now
Well, and it works, I think, with us because we're writing it from my character's perspective and then her character's perspective. So we've got two characters talking. They're two very different people, and they'll eventually come together. But yeah, so the story is going along one character, then the other character, one character, then the other character, and they're opposing in the beginning. So it's working, but yeah, it was working that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Steve, I didn't want us to get out tonight before. Is your prologue very long? It's just a very short. You're muted.
No, it's not. It's less than 1 page. It's about 400 or 500 words.
Okay.
You want to hear it?
Sure.
Okay.
So we're back to emotion now.
This is on This is from my book, Anissi, which I'm waiting to come off the press at this point. I will kill them, all of them. The Nile is but a single tear compared to the oceans of my anger. They came swiftly into our little village. I could hear that they were in many in number. They grabbed my husband before he could reach his bow. I could hear him calling me as they took him outside of our hut. And then I heard the sickening thud of his body slapping the ground like an antelope when it is pierced by an arrow. 2 men came into our hut and ripped my son from my arms. I could hear his screams over my own as they took him out of the hut and away from my life. Then 3 others who kept me from escaping beat me and raped me. I fought, screamed, cried, and gouged with what nails I had left until one of them stabbed me and left me for dead. I curled up on the floor of the hut as they set fire to it. I couldn't move. There was no sound left in my raw throat. As my hut's roof burned, raining fire and ash on me, I could hear feet pounding the earth and the creaking wheels of the cart being taken and children screaming. They fled as quickly as they had come. My vision ceased. When next I struggled to open my eyes, 2 girls, not yet women, were dragging me out of the smoldering ashes of the hut. Their wide open eyes were dripping terror as they kept darting glances to be sure none of the attackers were returning. They dragged me beyond the village to some bushes and fell to the ground. Tears rained from their faces and they whispered to each other and kept peeking back at what was left of the village that had been their home. They saw only flames and smoke and bodies of slain parents. The children were all gone, taken to be slaves, tied together in the cart pulled by the village ox.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. You gave me chills, Stephen.
That came to me late night. This is a pantser thing. Came to me very late in the night one night, and and that's the way it was written, word for word.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that was before I knew I was writing this book.
Wow, I can believe it. I've had similar things happen to me, and it's just weird. You know, you're laying there, maybe you're just either dozing off or you're just coming to in the morning, and either that or it woke you up, and there you are, and you've got this picture in your mind, and you hear this voice telling a story, and it's like, oh my God, you know, and you're trying to grab. I don't know how you got it captured. That's amazing.
I had a question. I have a question about the pantsing and plotting.
Mhm.
I tend to I start writing off about a message. You know, I have a message and I want to express it. And then I end up with a different kind of a message than I had started out with. Does anybody write message stuff, or is it all just whatever happens?
Not sure what you mean by message stuff.
Well, I don't mean like politics, but
No,
But
but
We're
like-
talking about themes, right?
yeah.
Yeah. My books are very strongly themed. I write about gender equity. I write about racial issues and inhumanity. And the books that I'm writing now are full of that, and it is by intention.
I think that it's kind of as though our minds are centered on some idea, something that bothers us or something that we think is wonderful and we want to share. And because we're focused on that, something inside of us sort of goes along with it. The next thing you know, we get offered bits and pieces or sometimes big chunks of information or ideas to go with what it is. It's almost like, I suppose for some people they'd say, well, I do my writing while I'm asleep, and then it tells me when I wake up, you know, what I wrote. So I don't know. I'm sure there's a whole myriad selection of the ways this thing works. But I can tell you that so many of the big authors, there's a few that crank books out like they're mechanics, and they're always plotters. They won't let something get in their way. They know where it's going. That's what they're going to do because they figured out already that this is what will make money, and that's where they're going. But a lot of everything from thriller writers to, well, any kind of fiction really will say that the characters will come in and they'll find characters that they didn't even have in the book. And then suddenly there's this character that's, you know, they have to put in there. The character insists. It's just like, you ain't doing this without me. So
I went to a lecture once at Seattle Public Library from a writer, and it was really interesting. She more or less said just what you said. And but in one of her books, she said she was very much led by the character and became surprised about a lot of things. And she researched, I don't know if somehow she found through research what she had written about was true. It was I don't know, I can't give you the particulars of who and what and how that happened, but she found that she had written about a true person, and
Wow.
those things did happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most annoying things with me as a writer, besides being in a critique group and reading your piece, is trying to get to sleep and then having a flow of ideas about the story or the character. And I have trouble sleeping. I take some medication and stuff, but I have a little lamp next to the bed, and it can happen like 9 times. I turn on the little light, I got a pad, I write that thing down, turn off the light, and then my head's on the pillow like I'm, okay, that was that, and then there's another idea. I got to turn the light on. Because I know from experience, I will never remember anything I want to remember in the morning. In the morning, I'll wake up and not even think about it. Not even think that I had something I wrote down. So that's just, it's pathetic. I'm a slave to it, and I've thought about some kind of recording, device situation. I don't know if some of you guys have a better setup, but I gotta turn that darn little light on, and it could be 1 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and the light makes it hard. I suppose if you have a little handheld, because it messes with your melatonin then. But if you have a little handheld recorder handy and you get a sense of where you've kept it, maybe you can just turn it on and talk, in the dark, and then so you don't disturb the images and the ideas too.
There's some way to do it on the cell phone, I'm sure, but then you still got to light up your phone to.
Yeah, but those little recorders like I have, it's a mini recorder that I used to the people I worked for did transcriptions for used to record into them, and you can use one on a table too, but they would record into that, and then the little tape I would put in my transcribing unit, and then I'd foot pedal and I could listen to that and type. Well, I've got one of those. You think I use it? No, I should.
You could rent it out to me.
Yeah, right. No, I need to try to use it. I do.
Steve, it looked like you were feeling the pain there. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I was remembering one time at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and had to get to the computer. I had this brilliant piece racing through my mind, and I spent 45 minutes typing furiously. This is a long time ago. Typing furiously. It was clearly a brilliant piece of writing. I can say that because when the power went out and I lost it because I didn't save it, there's no evidence.
No. Oh, that's too bad.
I learned to save. Every few minutes I hit that Command S.
Yeah, kind of like the way my email thing and Gmail set up. I can be working on a draft and I type a little bit. Next thing I know, boink, it saved it. Boink, it saved it. It just keeps it. It's like, wow, okay, that's cool. I wish I had that in my other program where it just would save it automatically as I went. But
I used to tell my students they don't have to save their work. They just don't save any more often than you're willing to lose everything in between. That usually socks it home to them.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And by the way, most word processors do autosave.
Mm-hmm.
My problem was I was on a Commodore 64. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah, and it didn't. Well, folks, we're a little after 8 now. Any other comments you want to make? And I don't want to cut everybody off, but I know people have other things in their lives too. So
is anybody definitely going down to the Palouse Writers on Saturday?
Well, I am, but I'm already in Palouse.
and she's
also
largely responsible for it.
What?
You're largely responsible, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are gonna have a table set out for writing group contacts. So if anybody from your group is coming down and wants to put flyers on the table, that would be fine.
Who's talking?
Hey, Layla, you don't see a picture of her. She's just her box.
I'm having a hot flash, so I'm not wearing a shirt right now.
Linda, where in the park is this? Where people
For
meet.
those who have been to Manitou Park, when you go in that first off of, what is it, Monroe? Whatever that main one is that goes up the hill from downtown, and you turn in, there's the main parking lot right there. And there's the pond that they've kind of redone and everything. As you are standing in the parking lot looking south, the pond is going to be over to your right, and right in front of you, a ways up across the lawn, will be this large shelter, wooden shelter with the open sides. And that is the place where I will be, with tables and benches and
So I think you mean off of Grand, I mean,
off of
off of,
Grand. No,
Yeah.
is it Grand?
yeah, Grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grand.
It's
If you'd gone up
by-
Monroe, you would have been lost, so don't do that. Go up Grand and you have a much better chance of finding the park. If you miss the park going up there, heaven help you, because it's huge. So, but it's by the main parking lot down there on the north side, and it's called the Picnic Shelter North. Okay. So
So there's more than one parking lot?
the largest parking, well, yeah, you can park, for instance, up on the hill in the flower place, but you don't want to do that. Just come in off the main street and don't go off anywhere in the park. There's a parking lot right there.
Okay.
close to where the kids' playground is.
Isn't the playground up on the south side?
It's on the north. The
Oh,
north,
across the, there's a street, the street that goes into the park, and it's across the street from that. From the,
all of this is east of the duck pond, right?
yes,
Okay, all you need to know, it's a duck pond. Find the duck pond and go east on foot.
I think the way I'm understanding it is if you're at the duck pond, it would be, east just a ways,
yeah.
The entrance.
You can, you can, it's big enough, you can see it from the duck pond. It's the only huge shelter in that whole part of the park.
Right.
It starts at 1.
I'm telling people 2 o'clock, but I have the space from 1 to 5. They do 4-hour blocks. So yeah, you can show up at any time. There's also I don't think the little restaurant, not restaurant, but little buying.
Eatery.
Bench
Yeah, I don't know that it's open yet, but if it is.
Yeah, it is.
Because they said mid-June, so I didn't know for sure. And
I
then
think it is.
across Grand, on that same street where where you would pull in there, across there and just a block down is one of those wonderful Rocket Bakery.
Rockwood. The Rockwood Bakery.
Oh, I thought it was called the Rocket Bakery.
Nope.
A whole bunch of
Rockwood.
them all over town. Oh, interesting. The map's wrong then, because I was looking at a map from to show me where everything was. But anyway, there's a bakery restaurant down there. And
Okay.
On 18th, Rockwood
hey, you guys
Bakery.
don't know more than I do. Look at this.
I know that.
Hey, you don't think
That's my stomping ground.
You're-
I
it
know
is
that area.
stomping ground. You've been posting this fantastic picture she's taking. That's at the pond, isn't it? The duck pond?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, turtles, blue heron. She's had
Yeah.
pictures of this blue heron. Oh my goodness, he's gorgeous. Or she, I don't know, Okay, Michelle, Tonda, Eric, Kalela, Sandy, Joyce, Mark, Steve, Paul, any more comments?
You're gonna hold up that book or you're gonna send that out?
Which book?
At the beginning, you held up a book.
I will hold up this book.
Oh, really? Of words for writers.
Yep. This is the one that I could get through normal channels. Now, which is to say, aunties. Aunties can order from Ingram if Ingram has it. Now I'm going to check on these other books that Tonda was talking about to see if any of those, because they're similar. I think they're probably, this is Olson, different writers. These are different writers, including Robert Bly, who's a poet that's really somebody. Yeah.
Hey there.
We had him here years ago. Anyway, I will follow up with a thing. I can send the chat out to everybody so that you'll have it in a form that you can, you know, access. And actually, you can save it too if you're showing the chat on the right hand side. If you clicked on the chat, and which is under more or whatever below on your screen, the bottom. And if you clicked on that, there is over to the right hand side on the very bottom, 3 little dots. And if you click on those 3 little dots, it'll open up some things, and one of them is save chat. And if you click on that, it will save it to your computer. Okay. But I can always send it to you if you couldn't get that, you know, for yourself. Okay. And then I like Nancy's idea. And I mean, the idea that we should do something about maybe the emotional writing and that whole thing. It might be something. See, I never know if there's people willing to meet again in a smaller group like this to discuss a particular thing, not at our regular guild meetings. So,
You know what, I want to say that what I resonated to were a couple people. I think Gary mentioned he writes what the person does, and then Stephen, I'm sorry, my what you read to us is exactly that. You read what you saw the person doing, so we could see what the person was doing, and that brought out all the emotion.
yeah.
That's what I've gotten from that part of this tonight.
Right, but see, some
Right
people,
what they're doing.
some people
Pardon?
have trouble because they will write in, like in Steve's thing, and say, when they attacked the camp, we were all asleep. We awoke in the middle of the night, and they were attacking people, they were raping people, beating them up, killing them. And then they grabbed the kids, and some of the kids were screaming, and I mean, there's no emotion there, you know. So there was the detail, the pacing of how he told it. And then he would share particular words and particular sounds and things like that. And that's where it really requires that creativity to do that. Because some people just the facts, ma'am, you know, and they just doink. This happened, this happened, this happened. I worked with a writer who did that. He has, and we worked and worked. I did, and another person did, and together we worked with him to. It's interesting, Paul, because he's also an engineer, and we worked with him in his science fiction project to describe more of the action, what was happening, the horses riding into camp, running up and almost running over top of his child, and you know, stuff like that. So to give it that kind of emotion, because that was missing, and he knew it was. I mean, after we described it to him, he went, yeah, you're right, it's not there. So anyway, but we can look at that topic. If anybody has ideas about how to deal with any of this, or if there's things you might want to do in a separate get together or something, let me know. I do have the topics sort of picked out for, let me see this, put this back, for future meetings. And like next time is talking point of view. Now, point of view would allow us to do a little bit of, and then the following one in August was talking dialogue. So those two would give us an opportunity already to touch on this, because you're with point of view, for instance, you're often switching. Maybe you have part of the time the character is in their head thinking I, and then part of the time you're outside their head and you're describing more of what's going on. So even if there's one character telling the story, when they're outside their head and describing what's going on, the action, that will likely require a different kind of emotive or emotional thing than if you're in the character's head. You know, you have times when you're hearing a person speak about how this thing is impacting them, and they'll talk, "Oh, hi, Joe, how are you doing?" Stupid son of a bitch, you know, in his mind or in her mind. And so you get those two things. So there's a lot of ways to play with using emotive language in a way that will help your reader feel what's really going on. So, but anyway, I don't want to belabor it anymore. We're way past 8, and we can follow up. But if you have any good ideas or even bad ideas that you want to share about how to go about this, do let me know. I'll entertain just about anything. So, and we might be able to fit it in, like I said, a point of view, and especially when we go to write dialogue in August, when we're looking at that, because that's one of the places that you can, you know, use some good emotion. Okay, I don't see any more last minute anything. You can always contact me if you need be. Drop me an email if you want the handouts, and I'll include the chat for you if you want the chat. That's got all those links and stuff in it, so it's kind of valuable. And otherwise, I haven't even put up the last meeting's thing on YouTube yet, so I'll try to get that one up and then try to get this one up as fast as I can, and for you to be able to review it if you wish. Okay. I hope y'all have a wonderful upcoming week, and I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at our get together in the park on June 28th.
There you go.
Thank you, Joyce. And
See you later, Linda.
yeah, y'all
What-
take care.
One
May
last
the
thought.
force be with you.
One last thought. Thank you.
Ah.
That's nice. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.